First of all, I want to thank you all to be here today, being part of this event. Make me really proud of all the people that joined the industry and are in the industry. It's really cool to see that, and also about the so awesome subject that is about the procedural content. So it will be a pleasure today for us to give you a glimpse on our work at Behaviour on this technology and what are our future endeavor around this beautiful things. But before going further, so I just want to make sure that everybody have an idea of who Behaviour is. So next slide.
It's one thing to have imagination, but it's another to harness its power to work on your vision and co-develop with partners to make it a reality. At Behaviour, we're crafting the imaginary into play.
Okay. Going next. So at least you got a glimpse on all the beautiful game on which we work. I'm presenting myself, Vincent Villeneuve. I'm a Vice President of Technology for Behaviour Interactive, and I'm
Maurice Sibrandi, Executive Technical Director.
Good. So next slide. As you saw, Behaviour is a leading independent developer that has won multiple awards over the year and multiple times. Like we have won Best Managed Company, we have Great Place to Work, and Best Workplace. And we are really proud of those awards since they are coming from our employees. So we are 1,300 and plus passionate and talented staff. We're located in different places. We have multiple offices. We have offices in Montreal, Toronto, Seattle. We have 2 offices in UK. So we have an office in Middlesbrough and one in Truro. And since last year, we have one in Rotterdam. So it's a pleasure to be close by. So this is it. So at Behaviour, we have strengthened our development by working with AAA's partner over more than 3 decades. We work with these AAA partners to ship the biggest game industry success and hits. We have worked on projects like Mortal Kombat, Halo. We have worked on Gears 5 and even Call of Duty. So it's really all big games probably some of you may know. So that we have also worked on so many others. We have participated to more than 250 partnerships over all those years. But we don't just offer our service to different partners. We also work on our original IP. And one of these flagship is Dead by Daylight. So for some of you that doesn't know what Dead by Daylight is, so it's a horror game in multiplayer where one player is playing the killer and his friends are playing the campers, trying to escape his wrath and avoiding to be hooked in the game. But yeah, so this game was facing a really big success. We reached out 60 million players on all platforms. We have roughly 1 million daily active users on that game, and IGN gave us a 9 out of the 10 as a review. So next slide. So but when we see this, and Dead by Daylight was launched kind of 7, 8 years ago, and basically what we have seen is player appetite for new content and keeping them, inside the game is always growing. So they want new content, and being able to adapt and renew the game asset inside the game is really, really important for the sustainability of the title. So without further ado, let's have a look through Dead by Daylight, our experience around procedural content generation. Now this, I will let the place to Maurice.
All right. Thank you, Vincent. So yeah, we're going to take a quick peek at the procedural systems within Dead by Daylight. The goal was to find a good balance between all the noise, between noise and rigidity of the content generation, but also keep the map very unique and recognizable. For that, we created some procedural systems. The goal of those procedural systems was to remove all the repetitiveness that you can have in regular hand-built levels. For that, we split the map in square tiles, and each of these tiles are independent, self-contained systems with certain gameplay elements. They have exit points, they have spawners. The spawners can spawn their static objects, can spawn also interactive objects like the generator or crates. And within these objects, they also can apply a lot of variation. If they spawn a house, the house can have a window open, window closed. Those kinds of variations are easy to do this way. I set square tiles. We also, initially, we also tried hexagonal tiles. I'll get back on that a little bit later. One of the parameters a tile also has is its density. We use that to generate the variety. The density can be low, medium, and high, and the whole goal of that is to still keeps on generating enjoyable environments, but also take into account that the game is a first person, is played in first person by the killer, and in third person by the survivors. So you need to be aware that the different field of views of those players are still workable within these tiles. Another reason for the difference in density is performance issues. You can imagine if you have a lot of low density tiles behind each other, the amount of the map you can see is incredible and will cause you just performance issues. So by having systems in place where there can be create blockers by creating more high density tiles between low density tiles, you can mitigate this issue. Oh, sorry. One of the initial hopes of the designers was that with having procedural generated content, they could have infinite levels. Unfortunately, that was not actually what the players wanted. The players wanted to have consistent levels. They wanted to be able to tell their friends, oh, have you seen this part of the level where we had to do this or that? So you need to create also moments where, with a lot of recognition in there. And we did that with these tiles. The tiles have their, because they're standalone, they can define and have their own constraints. And within these constraints, we create the variety. One of those varieties, like I already mentioned, the spawners, and within this variety, within these spawners, there's also themes. In Dead by Daylight, every team has a distinct object, big recognizable object, a tower, house, a shop, and the map generator generates the map around that object. But the tiles, they just are aware of the theme. The tiles have their own collision, white boxes, so to speak, and we use that for all the themes. So if there's the spawner, if it needs to create a platform, as you can, for one of those boxes, for instance, in one level it will create it using pallets, and in another one it will use haystacks, for instance. And this really helped for really, again, defining those tiles as standalone objects. So we also, not everything went right the first time, of course, so there are lessons to be learned. Like I mentioned, hexagonal tiles was one of our first experiments there. They work really well, but they are a little bit more complex, but the big advantage there is that the seams are not, the seams between the tiles are way less visible. You can imagine if you have 10 tiles all going in one row, and there's just like a big edge seam going on there. The way we mitigated that is that after the whole map has been generated, we randomly spawn vegetation around and on those seams to get rid of those. Yeah, infinity does not exist. We really hoped it did, but players really didn't want it, so our focus was to create more variety within the current constraints. And the goal was not to save on production time, but to make sure that the player has an enjoyable experience every time it plays, while still being a unique experience. Procedural content always puts a strain on QA as well. You cannot test every generated level. So, and this is very much an open door, but it's still very important to have. But you need to have a system where players or where the developers can enter the seeds or the parameters for certain areas, either through the UI or the back end. So they can regenerate levels that have been causing issues or have been reported by the public as being low performing or something like that. That of course means that the map generation needs to be deterministic. Otherwise you're in a big pile of trouble. And there's a nice added bonus here. If you're working with seeds that can be entered, it also means that you can prevent certain seeds from being generated because they are being flagged as being unplayable or low performing or just not fun enough. Interesting fact is that after the first few minutes of the game was released, the community played more hours of Dead by Daylight than QA did before the release. And I'm handing it back over.
So thank you, Maurice. This is the experience we have acquired through the development of Dead by Daylight and some of other original IP we worked at Behaviour in the more recent year. But based on all those learning, so yeah, it's a little easier. I wish I didn't made it twice. Okay, so but based on all those learning, we wanted to look next, and we decided to fix ourselves some goals and parameters for our next strategy and where we want to develop. And one aspect was to focus on the creativity. Since one of behavior value is to that we are really human focused, but we are driven by business. So we want to make sure that we don't use these techniques to produce more content with less people. Our goal is always to produce more quality content with our people. So it's the reason why we want our content pipeline and our tooling to help our people to produce more accurate world they want to create. And to do so, we need to provide inside the tooling the right tool change and validations to help them create the realistic world they want to create. Also, part of our pipeline, you know, we're doing games. Platforms have their limits. Sometimes when we generate objects procedurally, doesn't mean that it's a fit for the targeted platform. Sometimes we have to retouch those assets and we have to remanipulate them or adjust them to fit inside the game. Or maybe we want to create alternative assets, create variety based on a specific seed. So we also put part of our pipeline, the idea that we don't want it to be, we want it to be non-destructive, and making sure that we are always able to get back to a specific root of assets. So in that case, it's always possible to regenerate the asset based on a specific seed. So in the what's next, so we're really currently focusing on the terrain generation itself. So it's really the biggest mandate we gave ourselves is to continue the adventure of improving our system to generate terrain. The idea is to, at some point, be able to have an open world that will generate landscape and mountains and populated with different kind of objects. And to do so, we have to improve and continue working on our level generation. We want to be able to have the tool set that help us to generate dungeon and any architectural structure inside the level, like the navigation and all that, and those navigation mesh and all those things inside the world, to be able to make it playable. When we have the gray box level, so we want to be able to populate it. So basically on that side, we need to have great tools for building objects that will be integrated as props inside the environment. So we need to be able to play with the object, like stylize them, reshape them, and play with them to be able to be reused inside the level generation and being placed at a different spawn point. A good example here is we want to have ways to create buildings or rocks. So basically to do so, we need to have a way to, with different parameters, be able to give it a style or a theme, but also being able to say, okay, I want a three floor layer building, or a 2 or a 6. I want different roof. So you have to be able to play with it. And now that we have all this, so we have to go with the content generation, okay? And there, I'm speaking about having a way to define rules inside the level, to generate the world we want to have. Like, I want to be able to characterize, if let's say inside my map, I want to create a valley, so I will have erosion, so this may have an impact on the object we will put inside the level. So we need to be able to define these guidelines to see how the objects will react depending on the different place we put them inside the map. One example here could be inside the building. We want to create, you know, the navigation inside the building. But to do so, you have to define rules to define how you generate that floor and where the object will be generated, a little bit like we just saw with the tile system. But what if I want to put walls in my house? Oh, okay, so I have another set of rules to generate to say how my walls will be generated and identified. And it goes fast. So if you want to plan for your game, so you will see that probably we'll have a big roadmap of rules and content we can generate. And all these need to be coded and prepared and baked inside our tooling. So for that reason, really important to think about the prioritization, what your game needs and what you need to do to make a production plan to generate all those rules. And now that we have a beautiful world with all these objects that can be generated automatically, so we want to populate it with life. So basically, being able to create crowd is also an aspect that we're looking at to generate people, animals, that are customizable based on some rules inside the content generation to create that variety. We don't want to have a world of twins, you know. We want to be able to have some variety here, and this variety needs to make sense. And now that we want to create these type of crowds, so at some point it needs also to be intelligent. So for that reason, we have to, you know, work on the navigation based on and having all the data around the navigation to make sure that our crowd is consistent. So it's really the big topic that we are currently focused on. So the next step is really to look at our takeaway. What we're doing is we want to focus on creativity and avoid any repetitive task. Really, the idea here is really to make sure that we want our content creation team to be able to quickly reach a first draft and focus on polishing tasks. We want them to polish the diamond inside the game and having a way to put their asset as quick as possible inside the game. We want to produce more quality content in less time. And also, we want it to be accurate to the world we want to realize, which means that we need to have guidelines and validation of the content. But again, like I mentioned, content generation can be a rabbit hole, so make sure to avoid over-designing and making sure that you prioritize the right thing. For the non-destructive system, we want it to be deterministic, so we want to be able to use seeds to be sure to be able to regenerate our content and being always able to get back to a state where we had the original assets. And like Maurice said, the QA strategy, really important to keep it in mind. Make sure that you plan your QA and you have a good strategy on that side. So this is it for today. So I wish it was informative. And so thanks to be here. Any question?
On the final slide, you mention embedding validation guidelines. Does that mean that you have proceduralized and automated those validations? And if so, it's a complex problem. Could you talk more about that? Yeah.
So it's definitely something we are looking at. So we are also working on our automation testing approach. I would say that for the moment, we don't have any clear framework in place for it. So it's really just, we are in the inception of that part. So for that reason, I don't have much detail to give you this morning on this side, but definitely it's something that can be really complex. So I don't think we are at the stage where we have the one button and press the button and you have a game. I think we're still a bit far from that dream. But definitely, it's part of the QA strategy is to think about the automation testing and making sure you validate the content upfront before putting it inside the game. Also, because for the performance aspect, because it's something that we want to be able also to control through the automated testing, like having sandbox that when you generate an asset, at least you can smoke test it into a scene and making sure that you don't break any performance KPI. So it's something that we are currently looking at as a first step, because it's always one of the aspects. So if you generate an asset that is not suited for the platform you target, it's less interesting. Yeah. Is that answering your question? Yeah, thanks.
Hi there. I'm just curious, which parts of the Unreal tech stack are you using to implement the procedural systems?
Sorry,
So that are you using blueprints to implement them, or is it your own another system, or something else in Unreal? To add, so you've got where you're placing objects in the scene, for example, and it's changes or it's parameterized. How are you doing that?
So I'm not sure that.
What tech are we using to place objects in the scene from Unreal?
Yeah, so on
Mostly designer.
yeah, it's designer. So it's,
Yeah, it's all designer based, so it's just within the editor with specialized objects and their blueprints.
So blueprints, okay, cool.
Hello, thank you for your talk. Do you whitelist seats, like specific seats, or is it like all seats are allowed, but you just have a blacklist of seats that are not allowed?
yeah, so we have some kind of control on that side, and also we know that sometimes some seeds could be to avoid, or so basically it's something we have ways to whitelist and blacklist seeds to make sure that they are not used part of the game. Yeah, so it's a good strategy. Good point you raised.
Hi. You said you eventually chose not to use hexagons, but you never really explained why. Could you go into a little bit more detail on that decision?
Yeah, well, the main reason was the added hex tiles are just a little bit more complex to work with, and it really wasn't necessary. The square tiles were giving enough. We're generating fun enough maps for the players, and yeah, they're just a little bit easier on all sides to work with. So it's just a matter of convenience. Sorry, nothing special.
But yeah, also it was back then, because you have to remember that we were kind of 8 years prior, so it was more in the past, and we were more looking at these new approach of generating. So the first approach was, the first prototyping was to go with square tiles originally. But for another game, a subsequent game, we have experimented the X style. Like Maurice said, it's a little bit more complex, add a little bit more complexity, but also solve really good things, like the fact that you don't see you have less chance to see the pattern between the tiles. But since the game was already in production, so we decided to keep the square tiles, and I'm finding ways to hide the tile pattern itself. Yeah.
We have time for one more question.
I think also the right side should ask a question, by the way.
I'm not seeing hints.
Is it the side of the brain that?
Just saying.
Yes.
So you mentioned that you were working on terrain generation, and I was wondering, with that terrain generation, are you planning on making tiles that fit a certain terrain type, or are you planning on first generating the terrain and then modifying the existing tiles to fit with that terrain?
Yeah. So on that side, and also we are evaluating different technology, because we know that with Unreal it's also possible to do part of this work, but also since we are targeting open world, so we want also to use maybe a tile system on that side, and but we keep open, because one thing we want to keep in mind is always to be driven by the project needs. It's also depending of the design of the game we target. So again, so at Behaviour, we are a game developer, so we are not technology builder. So our focus is not to create technology like Epic. So most of the time we will go and just develop games using the Unreal technology. But sometimes you need specific things inside your game that you need to implement, and it's usually where we will implement it directly. So in that case, depending of the needs and depending of the project we worked on, so we will focus on different strategy. But yeah, the tile is something we want to continue to push further. Yeah, it's answering the question? Yes? Good. So I think it was the last question we had. Thank you very much for having us today. It was really great. Have a good Everything Procedural conference, and nice to meet you.